What's going on, people? It's your boy Kelechi back with another episode of the Ramblin' Mind Podcast. How are each and every single one of y'all doing today? I hope y'all are staying safe. I hope y'all are taking care of yourselves. I hope y'all are doing all the things you know you ought to do during these times, my friends. Man, I hope y'all are doing good right now. And prayers out to all the families out in Florida, in South Carolina, in Puerto Rico, and all these different places that got smashed by this hurricane, whether it's Hurricane Ian or I think it was Fiona. Man, just prayers out for all of them. I just pray that Lord will just help them in everything that they need right now, because I bet it's not easy. It cannot be easy. Like, just seeing some of the footage of what's happened down there, the destruction, it is just devastating to see. And also prayers out to people out in Ukraine, the whole other war going on out there, and just Putin being crazy. But that's not what we're here for. But, keep them in your prayers, keep praying for them, and keep watching out for them. And, for my country as well, Nigeria is about to start having elections again. And we just gonna pray. First of all, we celebrate the fact that we had another year of independence for Nigeria. Celebrated that thing on Saturday, October 1st. That was great. That was wonderful. But we pray for Nigeria because you never know what's going to happen with that country. Anything can happen, and things just change like that in Nigeria. But anyway, that's not why you guys are on this channel. That's not what y'all came here for. Today, I'm going to talk about how I was able to pay off $10,000 in credit card debt. For the longest time, I thought it was like $20,000 in credit card debt. You know how they say the older you get, the further the distance to school. That's basically what happened with me and this credit card debt. That number just kept on creeping up. I was like, yeah, I paid off $20,000 in debt. I added a lot of other numbers in there. Like I owed the IRS $10,000, which is a whole other thing that we'll talk about someday, of how to not pay the IRS their money, because your boy didn't pay that full thing. But anyway, I owed the IRS $10,000, and then I had $10,000 in credit card debt that I had, and how I was able to pay that off. I think it took me about 6 to 8 months. But the reason why I'm talking about this today, or the reason what encouraged me to want to speak on this topic once again, is because, as we all know, the Federal Reserve with Jerome Powell has been raising interest rates, the federal funds rate, which is the rate that banks loan to each other. And when that's basically the rate that sets all other kinds of interest rates. And so when that rate starts going up, every other interest rate goes up. I mean, on September 21st, this is a CNBC article that says the Fed raises rates by another 0.75 percentage point, pledges more hikes to fight inflation. As we all know, inflation is at a 40-year high. I mean, right now, I think inflation is about 7% as of the last print, which we'll get another one here shortly for this month, for the month of September. But for the month of August, inflation was like 7%. So the Fed, the only way that they can fight inflation is for them to raise interest rates. That's basically their main way of doing it. It's basically raising interest rate or dropping interest rate is the main tool that the Fed has to fight inflation or a recession or anything like that. And so the Fed right now is hiking up interest rate, making everything that much more expensive, is making housing so much more expensive. I saw a stat the other day that said that for last year, with a 3% interest rate, you could afford to buy a $750,000 house if you could pay a mortgage of $2,500. This year, with interest rates around 7%, that same $2,500 mortgage will only get you, and I say only, but will only get you $450,000 house. That's almost double, just to put into perspective just how much interest rates play a role. But again, I'm diverting. Let's get back to the main topic, which is how to pay off interest rates as your interest rates are just going crazy right now. I was reading, as I do, I read a lot of articles. And one of the articles I came across is credit card interest rates hits a 26-year high. The last time interest rates were higher than 18% was in January of 1996, according to bank rate data that goes back to 1985. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. I mean, right now, interest rates for your credit card, if you open a new credit card today, your interest rate is going to be about 20%. 20%. If you have existing credit right now, your interest rate is about 15%. Depending on your credit score, that can be much higher. If you have only credit, you're going to get smacked with that 24%. And for all my lovers of store cards, the average for a store card credit card is 28%. Be careful with these store cards, my friends. Be very careful with these store cards. They'll be dragging y'all out the mud, just doing all kinds of stuff with y'all. But anyway, that's not why you're here. Again, how was I able to pay off $10,000 worth of $10,000 worth of credit cards in under a year about? And the first thing I did was, one, I stopped using the credit card. I stopped using the credit card. This is probably the most important step for most people when it comes to paying off your credit card debt. The number one thing you need to do, don't use the credit card anymore. This is so imperative. I say this all the time with a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I'm trying to pay off my credit card debt, but they're still using it to swipe everywhere they go. They're still using the same credit card to pay for stuff. You have to stop using that credit card. What I did personally was I left that credit card in the house. I put it in a drawer in my bedroom and I said, I'm not taking this with me anywhere anymore, because then you're not tempted to actually swipe the card. I was forced to use my debit card for everything. In other words, if I didn't have money for it, they were going to tell me, oh, sorry, bro, but this thing just got rejected. You can't pay for this. Point is, do not use your credit card anymore. You have to put it away. You have to stop the bleeding. That's the first step that you have to take care of. It's like if somebody gets stabbed, the first thing they always say is, stop the bleeding, stop the bleeding. If you don't put something over that injury, if you don't put something to at least put some pressure on that to stop the bleeding, it's just going to keep spiraling and getting worse and worse and worse. And you're going to feel like there's nothing I can do. I've tried and there's nothing you can do. But the first thing you have to do, stop using that credit card. Put that card away. Step away from that card. Save yourself from that card. So that's number one. That's the first thing you need to do. The second thing you need to do is go to your bank account or your credit card account and write down what is the interest rate and how much do I owe on every single card that you owe money on. For me, I had two cards. I had an American Express card and I had a Discover card. My American Express had a much higher interest rate on it than my Discover card. And plus my American Express card also had, I think it was like $6,000 that I owed on that one. And my Discover card had the remaining $4,000, about that much. Is somewhere in that range. But the American Express was the one that had the higher interest rate and had way more money that I used on that card versus my Discover card, which had a little bit lower interest rate on that. Write these two numbers. The reason why you want to write this down is this can give you a visualization for you to know, okay, what is the next step that I want to take? Because there are two routes to go ahead with when it comes to paying off credit cards. There's the debt snowball method, and then there's the debt avalanche method. The debt snowball method is basically you pick the smallest balance and you should work your way through and pay it off. You just start with the smallest balance, you pay the most that you can towards that one, and then you pay the minimum balance on the other cards, on everything else. So for example, in my case, with my $6,000 that I owed on American Express, I would just wait on that one. I would just keep paying the minimum on that one, while on my Discover card, which I owed $4,000 on, even though it had a lower interest rate, I was focused highly on it. I would just throw every single extra cash that I had towards that one. So that's the debt snowball method. On the other hand, you have the debt avalanche method. The avalanche method is basically you look at which one has the highest interest rate. So going back to my situation again, with the American Express card, that had a higher interest rate. So I would focus heavily on trying to pay that one off and then pay the minimum on the Discover card. So that way I'm focused on trying to save me some money, because the way this thing happens is all a compounding effect. You don't want to pay more than you have to pay. So that's why you do the debt avalanche method. But the debt snowball method is one for most people who just need to build that habit, who need the psychological help of like, okay, I accomplished it. I was able to pay off this debt and I was able to pay off this small thing. And by doing that, it gives them a little stepping stone and stepping stone and stepping stone to be able to accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish. For those who don't necessarily need that, or in my opinion, I feel like most people, you should have a little bit of willpower to be able to do the debt avalanche method, because that's going to save you more money on the back end. However, neither one is right or wrong. There's just the one that you choose to pick and decide on it and do what you need to do. The third thing I did was I tracked my expenses and I created a budget based on those expenses. So the way that I tracked my expenses was I already connected all my stuff to Mint. And so all my expenses was regularly being tracked on Mint. I just never paid attention to it. I had a budget on Mint. I just never used it. I never paid attention to it. I was like, yeah, it's there, but I never used it. So I was able to go back into Mint and go through all my categories and see how much I was spending and where I was overspending and where was the areas where there were holes in my pocket that was starting to cost me money. And so I just went back through that. It was easy for me. However, I would suggest that if you don't want this to take another month of you tracking your spending, what you can do is literally just go back on all your credit card statement, your debit card statements, and look at how you've been spending your money. But if you don't want to do either one of these things, you don't want to track your spending, you don't want to do that, you just want to go ahead and go into the second part, which is make a budget or make a plan. It's simply now you have to decide how much you can actually spend and then how much will be going towards your debt. That's the second part of whether it's making a budget. Is basically you have to sit down and actually be honest with yourself of what your life actually costs. How much does your life cost? In other words, sit down and write out. There's one thing you can use, which is Ramit's conscious spending plan. I think is a great way to actually visualize all of this for you to actually see like, oh, okay, this is how much I spend in this is how much I'm spending in this. It's a great way for you to optimize that. So you can go to Ramit's website or just search Google for Ramit's conscious spending plan. Find that thing, and then you can use it to set yourself up for the plan segment of this, which is where you sit down, you write down what are my core expenses. I'm thinking about your power bill, your rent/mortgage, your water bill, all of these things. You write that down. How much are you spending on food? How much are you spending on transportation? How much do you spend eating out? All of these things, you categorize all of it. And then you say, okay, how much can I spend in order for me to pay this debt off? And then you have to decide when do I want to pay this debt off? That will decide for you how much you're going to be trying to throw at this debt, how much extra money you're going to try and throw at this debt. So if you decide and say, you know what, let's say I have like $20,000 in debt. I want to pay that thing off in the next 20 months. It means $1,000 has to be going through that thing every single month. If you look at your budget and you're like, yo, how am I going to do this? At the same time, I still want to save a little bit because I still want to save a little bit for 401k or investing or whatever, because I think we can chew gum and walk at the same time. How will I be able to categorize and adjust everything in order for me to do that? So that's the next step, is make a plan. And then I think we're on number 4 now. The fourth thing I did actually came, this should actually have been number 3, which is I went ahead and saved an emergency fund. I got myself, all I did was save $1,000. In case anything happened, I would be able to pay for it and I wouldn't have to go reach for the credit card again. This is very important. And the reason why I say this is the 4th step is because after you make your budget and you make your plan, you will see how much extra money you can go ahead and put towards saving for your emergency fund as quickly as possible. I believe everyone should start with at least, I'll say $1,000 if you're younger. I'll say you probably need to at least do your deductible. So figure out what is your medical deductible, how much minimum do you need, or what is your car deductible, and have that saved up. So it could be anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. Have that thing saved up. Put that thing somewhere where you're not going to touch it. This money is not meant for you to use for emergency shopping. It's not meant for you to use for when you panicked and your friend said, hey, can we go eat out tonight? And you panicked and said yes. This is not meant for you to use for any of these things. That's not what the point of this money is. The point of this money is when you wake up one morning, you're on your way to work and you get a flat tire. It's when, for some reason, your car breaks down and you got to get a tow truck. It's when things happen in your house. Your laptop breaks down on you. You need it for school, so you order a new one. That's an emergency. If it's stuff like that, like stuff you didn't plan for, not stuff that, oh my gosh, I went to lunch too many times and I need money to pay for. No. Not for new clothes, not for trips, not for any of that stuff. This is an emergency fund. Another reason why you want to have this emergency fund in place is that this way you can actually learn how to save money without having actual goals for that money, which is so critical when you get on this financial journey, is learning how to save just because. Is learning how to save money, not because you're going to spend it later, but just because. Not because you need the money, but because in case of anything should happen, that money just sits, okay? So that's number 4, is get that emergency fund in place. And then number 5, you got to be aggressive on this thing. The thing about credit card debt is it can lull you to sleep, especially when we have a lot of it and it's taken us a long time. It's very easy and very possible that the credit card will lull you to sleep. You cannot allow it to lull you to sleep. What I did for myself was I made it a game. I had a poster on my wall that showed me the progress that I was making into it. And just like when I played video games, I'm a big video game guy. Just like achieving certain accomplishment in a video game, I did the exact same thing with that wall. Every time I hit a category, like I was trying to pay off $10,000, when I'll pay off $2,000, I'll celebrate. It would be like an achievement unlocked, power upgrade. And then from there, it'll be like when I paid off $4,000, achievement unlocked, power upgrade. And literally I would celebrate, whether it's just by getting myself a little bit of cup of ice cream or going to Zaxby's or going to Chick-fil-A, things that I was like holding myself back, things that I enjoyed to do, but I was holding myself back from doing. I would celebrate a little bit for myself, because one of the things that was going to keep you going, especially when this journey is long, is those little spice of life, is those little moments where you have a little bit of reprieve to yourself to say, yes, I'm accomplishing something. I'm doing a little bit of something and making progress a little bit. So the fifth one is you have to be on top of it, but take time to celebrate when you hit milestones. Take time to celebrate as you're climbing the ladder, as you're making the journey. Take time with it. Otherwise, this journey will get very hard and you won't ever get to the target that you're trying to reach for. So let's do a quick recap of all 5 steps of how I was able to pay off my debt. Number 1, I stopped using the card. Very important. I stopped using the card. Number 2, I wrote down how much debt and what was the interest rate on that debt. And that way I turned around and I decided what plan I was going to use. Was I going to use the snowball method or was I going to use the avalanche method? For me, I used the snowball method because at that point, I was not that savvy with my finances. I was still learning a lot of stuff. Now, I advise most people to do the avalanche method because I think that we have more willpower and we're more enabling to be able to do a lot of things. Number 3, I looked at my expenses and I created a budget/plan. I looked through my expenses and I just created a budget/plan to determine how I was going to pay this thing off. How much excess money is actually in my budget when I'm not just spending it willy-nilly all over the place. You got to take the time to go through your budget or create a budget or create a spending plan. You can use Ramit Sethi's conscious spending plan, which will be very helpful for you to actually sit down, write down everything, and then create a plan that will actually work for you to be able to pay this thing off in a decent time that you want for yourself. Number 4, have an emergency fund. This is going to be key because life will happen. Life will certainly happen. And the one thing I don't want is for you to get derailed because life happened as you're moving towards this goal. And then number 5, stay on top of it, but celebrate. Stay on top of it, but celebrate. As you are going higher and higher, as you're trying to get this goal done and it looks so far away, celebrate the milestones. Figure out what your milestones are going to look like and figure out how you're going to celebrate. Don't go too far with it. Don't over celebrate, but find little things for yourself where you're able to celebrate these things. Call your friends up and be like, yo, I just paid $2,000 off my, find things to celebrate with as you hit these different milestones. But anyway, that's all I got for y'all. I hope y'all learned 1, maybe 2 things out of this entire thing. And if you did, hit that like button. If you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button. But I'm gonna catch y'all up on the next one. Remember, generosity is always greater than greed. God bless each and every single one of y'all. And I'm out. Peace.